Welcome to Naked History. You're listening to Unearthed.
Deep in the desert of South America, mysterious pyramids rise up from the ground. The lost city of Caral.
There's nothing like this in human history. This is totally unique.
Recently discovered after millennia buried beneath mountains of sand, it was constructed at the same time as Egypt's Great Pyramids at Giza. Did these people build South America's first ever pyramids?
Look at the conservation of these things. It's really incredible.
Now, new mapping technology is allowing investigators to delve deep inside the heart of Caral to solve its mysteries. Who created these structures and why?
The building of pyramids, the building of monuments, everything was religious.
And could this be the birthplace of the first civilization in the Americas?
It suggests that the trajectory these people took towards civilization is different than anywhere else in the world.
To answer these questions, we'll deconstruct this ancient wonder. We'll dive deep into its mighty pyramids, burrowing down through tons of sand to unearth the incredible story of South America's ancient lost civilization that suddenly disappeared without a trace beneath the desert sands. Caral, a mysterious series of pyramids in the heart of Peru. Archaeologists only began excavating this abandoned desert site just over 20 years ago. Since then, it has continued to confound investigators. Why are such incredible structures here, in one of South America's most inhospitable landscapes? Today, researchers are uncovering a lost civilization unlike any other. One that's forcing archaeologists like Jeff Rose to radically rethink how civilization arose on this continent.
Before archaeologists started working here, we thought there's 4 or 5 original complex civilizations in the entire world. But this adds one more to that list. Except what they found here is nothing like the other early civilizations.
Caral is one of the most extraordinary archaeological sites in the world. Buried beneath layers of sand, rock, and rubble lies a mysterious pyramid abandoned for thousands of years. The pyramid covers an area of 5 football fields at its base. A giant 98-foot-high structure built from multiple platforms. In front of it, a bizarre stone ring with 10-foot-high walls and stairs flanked by 2 upright monoliths. Nearby, archaeologists find 5 other pyramid-like buildings. Could this vast ancient city rewrite the rulebook on how civilizations are born? When Europeans arrived in the Americas in the late 1400s, they encountered the Maya, Aztec, and Inca civilizations, all advanced, but also steeped in violence. Jeff Rose is an expert in early societies. Most archaeologists believe that all these American cultures were born out of war.
It was people having to gather together to protect one another from those guys over in the next valley. And in doing so, they were increasing their technological complexity, they were becoming more social, and then before you knew it, you had civilization. At least that's what we've thought for the last 100 years.
Caral could rewrite the rulebook because, incredibly, experts haven't unearthed a single weapon here. So did Caral evolve from peace, not war? Jeff joins the archaeological team digging for answers. Ruth Shadi Solis, in charge of the excavations here at Caral, first visited this site nearly 25 years ago. But Ruth thought differently. And in 1996, she began excavating. It wasn't long before she realized that this site was exceptionally old and might even be the earliest civilization in the Americas. Until now, experts believe the Olmec civilization was the oldest in the Americas. These people inhabited Mexico from around 1500 BC. Could Caral be even older? The hunt for proof of Caral's age begins inside the city's largest pyramid. The Great Pyramid is an ancient engineering marvel. A series of stone and mortar walls form the exterior. Supporting them, a layer of tightly packed gravel forms a solid base. Behind this, large rocks packed into nets called shikras are stacked up against the inner retaining walls to give the structure strength. Could these strange bags hold the secret to the pyramid's age? The dry desert air has preserved the shikras in incredible condition. But how long have they been here? The nets are made of organic material, such as reeds or grass, so scientists can use carbon dating to figure out their age. Lead archaeologist Plinio Guillén Alarcón is excavating the shikras. Plinio's results reveal it is far more ancient than expected. Caral dates back nearly 5 millennia, thousands of years before the Olmec, Mayan, or Inca cultures arose. It's an incredible discovery.
To have this here completely rewrites what we thought we knew about the rise of civilization in the Americas.
The shikras reveal that civilization on this continent began long before experts previously believed, which means Caral's monuments were built at the same time as the ancient Egyptians were building their vast pyramids at Giza. And there's another surprise. All the sites that Jeff has worked on from this period are normally filled with ceramic shards, but no one has ever found any at Caral.
Pottery is the most common thing you'd find at any archaeological site over the last 7,000 or 8,000 years. It's used for everything. It's storing liquids, for cooking. It's durable, so it doesn't decay in the ground. So not to have it here is a really weird mystery.
For thousands of years, human civilizations have relied on ceramic pots for cooking and to store their food, water, and other goods. The earliest potters shaped their clay by hand, then fired it in open bonfires, making pots hard enough to be preserved for millennia. Over time, civilizations turned their skill into art, creating elaborately decorated vases that tell us much about their culture. From China to Egypt, all the major ancient civilizations have left pottery behind, except at Caral. Why? The team believes Caral is unique. A civilization where people built huge, complex pyramids long before mastering seemingly simple skills, such as firing clay.
It suggests that the trajectory these people took towards civilization is different than anywhere else in the world.
Caral smashes the model for how civilizations are born. So how did these people survive in the desert without water? And what were these pyramids for? Can this body found buried in the heart of Caral's Great Pyramid provide the answer? Paleopathologist Guido Lombardi examines the bones of ancient skeletons discovered throughout Caral's Supe Valley. He's trying to work out who these people really were. Could their lives and deaths shed light on the mystery of how these great pyramids were used? A clue may lie with a skeleton buried inside this ancient monument, Caral's Great Pyramid. At the top of the structure lie the crumbled walls of a series of interconnected rooms. At their heart, a ceremonial chamber of huge significance to the city's elite. When archaeologists excavated this room, they discovered a gruesome secret. Amongst the rubble lies the skeleton of a man, not seen for around 4,000 years. Who could it be? Can this discovery shed new light on the purpose of these ancient structures? Guido investigates the man's skeleton, immaculately preserved by the protective walls of the pyramid.
From his teeth, we can see that they were in very good shape, no? So this person could have been in his 30s or perhaps 40s.
Guido examines his spine. He discovers bony growths on his lower vertebrae.
This is something that tells us that this person carried heavy loads. The person was carrying so much loads that the body needed extra bone to be built in order to make the spine stronger.
His feet also show signs of damage.
So this is osteoarthritis, which is a condition that is associated to athletes today.
The evidence tells a tale of incredibly hard labor. This worker carried huge loads over long distances. But skull fractures lead Guido to believe his death was no accident. He suspects the man was attacked, then thrown into the burial pit while still alive.
Once the body was placed in that position, then he was covered with stones, big stones, that actually crushed many of his bones. And then, still alive, he was killed.
The skeleton's position reveals to Guido why he died.
The person was naked, was tied up with the hands on his back. So there is no doubt for us that this person probably was sacrificed.
The man was killed and buried within the pyramid as a ceremonial offering to the gods.
To me, the way I understand it is that this person's body was placed there to work as a protector of the pyramid once it was completed.
Archaeologists think the pyramids were the stages on which religious rituals were carried out to unite the community.
From what we know, Caral was associated to many practices around a very strong religion. This skeleton tells us that ritual was very important to them.
Almost all of the world's ancient civilization worshipped gods. Rituals would be held on sacred stages to appease them with gifts and offerings. If the gods were thought to be bloodthirsty, they were offered human sacrifice. In the peaceful city of Caral, this practice was relatively uncommon. But the massive temples and ritual fire altars show religion was still a hugely important part of life. So who presided over these ceremonies? Was a dominant upper class using these pyramids to wield power over the masses? Archaeologists believe a hierarchical society is one sign of a developed civilization. This is the body of a woman discovered near Caral. Her skeleton suggests that not only did such an upper-class elite exist, but they went to extraordinary lengths to demonstrate their status and power. This woman's skull is strangely flattened.
This is not a disease. This is not a condition. It wasn't caused by an accident. There is no evidence of fracture.
Her head was deformed while she was alive. This skull remodeling is caused by tightly binding the head to reshape it.
We know that they did this before the baby turned 1 year old. It looks like in this society, this was a marker of high status.
This woman's remains and the sacrificed worker are clear signs that the people of Caral were split into high and low status. This was a complex, structured society made up of different social classes. The elite imposed a religion that enforced their power, and the pyramids were at the heart of their rituals. But what brought these people to the desert in the first place? And how did they create such an incredible city in one of the world's harshest environments? The ancient city of Caral in South America is transforming our understanding of human history. It's older than any monumental culture in the Americas, and may have been the birthplace of civilization on this continent. Archaeologist Jeff Rose is puzzled by how different Caral seems from the many other early cultures he's studied. One of its greatest mysteries is why the city was built in such hostile terrain. Caral sits in the middle of Peru's coastal desert, an arid belt between the Andes and the Pacific. It receives around an inch of rainfall every year.
The one thing you really need for a settlement to flourish is water. You need a water supply that's both going to provide water for the people and is also going to nourish the plants. So this entire enterprise is contingent on whether or not there's a reliable source of fresh water.
The people were certainly getting water from somewhere, because the city they built was enormous. In its heyday, Caral would have been truly magnificent. The circular plaza was once painted white. This 10-foot-high ring was a place for ceremonies and large gatherings. At the top of the vast main staircase, an altar with a central fireplace suggests organized religion was at the heart of society. And to house the city's population, there were enough buildings for over 3,000 people. The city's epic footprint reveals that the people of Caral were not just surviving, they were thriving. So how is this possible in one of the driest places on Earth? Archaeologist Aldemar Crispin Balta is hunting for answers. This streak of green surrounds the trickling Supe River. Investigators believe they've found evidence that Caral's people had a clever way to channel this water to their fields. This faint channel, barely visible in the rock face, could be part of one of the oldest irrigation systems in the Americas. Carved out centuries before any other South American civilization built waterways, at the same time as the ancient Egyptians were constructing canals. Aldemar believes what they've discovered here is just a tiny fraction of a massive system of waterways. But for the people of Caral, there was one big problem. The Supe River only flows for 5 months of the year, between December and April. The rest of the year, it's dry. When the river had no water, people faced the deadly threat of drought. To survive, they had to find another water source to feed the canals. So where was this life-saving supply? When the river dried up, the Supe Valley had a unique advantage. Water from high in the Andes traveled through permeable rock and emerged in the valley as freshwater springs. This underground source ensured farmers had water all year round to irrigate their thirsty crops, even in the driest of times. A year-round water supply made life possible at Caral. It allowed them to irrigate the fields that supported a thriving population. But incredibly, experts are discovering they didn't use this precious water to focus on growing food. Aldemar's team hunt for clues in the debris left behind by ancient farmers.
Every ancient civilization that I know of has fed their people with some kind of a key cereal grain, whether it's rice or corn or wheat or barley. So what we're looking for here is what kind of seeds are in this dirt? What were they growing in that valley?
Aldemar discovers that people here grew a few vegetables and fruit. But the most common crop of all comes as a surprise. Once again, Caral goes against everything archaeologists like Jeff think should have been happening 5,000 years ago.
It's crazy to think that they're going through all this work just to grow cotton. You go to the Sumerians, and they're growing wheat and barley. You go to the Maya, and they're growing corn. These are all things that can feed a civilization, and these guys are putting a tremendous amount of work in to grow something that you can't eat.
The builders of Caral's lost pyramids found ingenious ways to extract every drop of water from their harsh environment. They'd tamed the desert, but why were they using it to grow something they couldn't eat? And how did the city eventually become buried beneath a blanket of sand? This intricate cotton material discovered at Caral is a clue. Archaeologists believe it's a fishing net. Were Caral's people growing cotton to produce fishing equipment? If so, why? When the city is 10 miles from the ocean. Investigators turned to the pyramids for clues. When archaeologists first uncovered the Gallery Pyramid, they discovered a treasure trove of unexpected objects, including an offering that contained fragments of a raft. When they investigated further, they unearthed something even more surprising. In what was once the ceremonial hall on top of the pyramid, they found the trunk of a tree, surrounded by carefully arranged blue whale vertebrae. Why did this desert-dwelling civilization fill their monument with offerings related to the sea? These clues suggest that the ocean was central to Caral's survival. But what role did it play in this inland society? Gabriel Prieto Burmester is an archaeologist who specializes in the marine history of Peru. In his lab, he examines artifacts from an archaeological site near a coastal town called Huanchaco. The settlement he is studying was founded about 1,000 years after Caral. But Gabriel believes it could still shed light on the enigma of Caral's ancient past. The first fishermen here hunted sharks with hooks and lines.
We have all these shark vertebrae, more than 16,000 that we currently excavated. And of course, we have these beautiful shark teeth, that tell us about the capacity of these people to actually hunt these big and large fish.
But hunting 10-foot-long sharks was a risky way to feed their families. It wasn't long before the people of Huanchaco utilized a new, more efficient technology.
These are two beautiful examples of fishing nets.
Nets allowed them to catch smaller fish, but in greater numbers.
Perhaps the most important thing is that they were all made of cotton.
Today, the fishermen of Huanchaco still use simple nets while riding traditional reed boats, a way of fishing inherited from their ancestors. Gabriel thinks that by using nets, these ancient people were able to catch more food than they needed. What they didn't eat, they exchanged or sold. The people of Huanchaco were embarking on a process crucial to civilization: trade.
The fact that they are using fishing nets to increase their fish catch tells us about a more open community that is using a surplus in marine products to exchange for other goods.
These artifacts are surprisingly similar to the temple offerings at Caral. So archaeologists think people at Caral also traded nets for fish, but nearly 1,000 years earlier. Could these simple nets represent the first flowering of trade in the Americas, that almost 5 millennia later is still going strong in the commerce and economies of today?
When you exchange products from different regions, you are actually fostering one of the principal elements of civilization. That is, on the one hand, social interaction, and at the same time, you are increasing, the economy.
Experts believe that Caral's new trade-based prosperity didn't happen by chance. It was driven by a sudden change of climate. A cold water current which flows along the coast of South America helps support an abundance of marine life. But nearly 5,000 years ago, the waters warmed and the fish stocks changed. Larger species, such as tuna, were replaced by schools of smaller fish. This called for a change in fishing techniques. Instead of using a single line, the fishermen now needed nets. Nets required more cotton than the fishermen could grow themselves. But the people of Caral had plenty, so trade benefited them both. As the citizens of Caral exchanged cotton for fish, their civilization grew and flourished.
Caral was like a very large marketplace, the perfect stage for these people to meet and to exchange products between fishing and farming communities. And that's definitely something that eventually leads to a more complex way of life.
The pyramids were also a draw, attracting traders to the city.
Caral had these beautiful and large monumental centers where they can go to pray, where they can go to exchange their products for other goods.
Unlike all other early civilizations in the Americas, this society wasn't born out of warfare. Rather than attacking their neighbors, the people of Caral built a rich culture rooted in peaceful trade. But another mystery remains unsolved. When archaeologists uncovered the giant pyramids of Caral, they found that there was an abrupt end to human activity here after 1600 BC. Why did civilization suddenly disappear from the Supe Valley? Could a series of cracks in the Great Pyramid hold the secret to Caral's collapse? The giant ceremonial complex at Caral was the center of the first civilization in the Americas, thriving for more than a millennium. But nearly 4,000 years ago, the site was suddenly abandoned. There's no evidence of human activity beyond 1600 BC. So what went wrong? Archaeologist Dan Sandweist investigates whether one of nature's most destructive forces brought Caral to its knees.
Look at the conservation of these things. It's really incredible. It's such a luxury to work on the coast here where everything is so dry and well preserved.
He thinks a clue to what caused the destruction can be uncovered within Caral's largest monument, When archaeologists first unearthed the Great Pyramid here, they discovered it had suffered tremendous damage. A giant crack ran through the sacred fire altar. It split the ceremonial hearth in two. And the southern face of the structure had slumped and slipped sideways, deforming the entire pyramid. Could a cataclysmic earthquake have driven the ancient people of Caral to flee their sacred city? Throughout history, many cultures and civilizations have been destroyed by natural disasters. Was this the fate of Caral?
This location where Caral is one of the most earthquake-prone areas on Earth. It's part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, where a plate from under the Pacific Ocean, in this case, is going underneath the South American continent and pushing it up. And as it goes, it gets stuck, creates friction, and when that releases, then you have really big earthquakes. And around here, they occur about every 50 years, really big ones.
Dan believes one such colossal quake badly damaged the Great Pyramid's ceremonial buildings.
A really good example of the damage this big earthquake did is this wall that we see here. You can see how the top is pushed back in this direction and the base is pulled out. It's even bulged in the middle. If you look at these walls rotated back, they're at least 20-degree angle rotation. If this were happening in a city today, it would be a real disaster.
Could this terrifying event have forced people to abandon Caral? Archaeologist David Palomino Olivos believes the citizens wouldn't run from a threat that they knew well, no matter how powerful. David's investigations here unearth evidence of repairs to the site. This proves that Caral's people stayed to shore up their monuments. But one thing has puzzled him. Why didn't the Great Pyramid collapse? His structural investigation suggests something astonishing. Caral's architects had developed building techniques to minimize earthquake damage. He believes the shikras, which give the pyramid strength, also give it a degree of seismic stability. When tightly packed one on top of another, these loose sacks of rock disperse seismic energy through the building, diluting its destructive power. This technology saved the Great Pyramid from total destruction and allowed it to be repaired. So if it wasn't earthquakes, what did cause Caral to be abandoned? And what terrible event buried the city in sand? Dan Sandweiss is trying to work out why they left.
Yeah, something was going on. That didn't come in with the wind. Oh, look at the size of those rocks. So as we go down this pit, we're going through time. The deeper you go, the older you get.
He's looking for changes in the sand, unusual layers which could be evidence left behind by a natural disaster.
If we look down here, there's a really fascinating deposit about 5 meters down. Angular rocks, large size, jumbled together. That took a lot of water to bring those in here. It must have been moving really quickly at some point to deposit those rocks.
Although Caral is a desert for most of the year, it can be hit by periodic floods. With earthquakes loosening the sediment, any storms further up the valley unleash huge volumes of mud. These mud flows have a name in Peru: huaicos.
So if we were here during this event, it would start raining first. There'd probably be lightning and thunder, and then we'd hear this rushing, roaring sound, and this massive wall of mud and rock and sand would start shooting down this canyon towards Caral. It would be a really nasty place to be. If you were in the way of this, you probably wouldn't survive.
In 2017, this region of Peru suffered a series of devastating huaicos. Many communities are still reeling from them. Nearly 5,000 years ago, Caral was built up on a terrace above the river, perhaps helping to avoid the worst of these huaicos. Caral's architects had done all they could to design a city resistant to nature's wrath. Dan still believes it could have been a powerful natural force that pushed them to abandon the pyramids. He suspects the huge sand dunes that encircle the site could hold the key to Caral's demise. Some soar over 100 feet high. Their formation, thousands of years ago, was triggered by a shift in the climate.
When Caral was flourishing, I've discovered this is a time when there was a really big change in the climate system, and we begin to get these El Niño events that occur every couple of decades. And that means every once in a while, the waters off the coast get warm. And when they warm, water evaporates and comes inland, and we get these massive storms in the valley.
Storms alone are a deadly threat, but when they hit earthquake-ravaged terrain, the effect is catastrophic. As earthquakes hit the region, they destabilize the arid mountain earth, sending loose debris crashing down into the foothills. Torrential rain, powered by the warm water of the Pacific, washes the debris into the river and eventually to the coast. Over many decades, the silt builds up to form a large ridge. The ridge seals off the once rich fishing bays, filling them with sand. To make matters worse, over time, prevailing winds then blow the sand inland and turn the once fertile fields into desert. Over 1,000 years, Caral gradually choked to death.
It created the dune we're standing on. This is a 30-meter high dune made from that sand.
In the end, nature killed off Caral. Its agriculture, its economy, its magnificent pyramids, all smothered by sand.
When you cover the fields, you lose a big piece of the economic basis for the Caral civilization. They were based on farming and fishing. And if you knock out a big part of the farming, it's not sustainable anymore. And we think that's what happened to Caral. That's why it came to an end.
Once their civilization faltered, around 3,600 years ago, the citizens of Caral disappeared from history. The Egyptians would continue building pyramids for another century. But no more pyramids would be built in the Americas until they were constructed at places like Teotihuacan and La Venta in Mexico, more than 1,000 years later. But Dan believes Caral's culture and customs lived on.
When Caral was abandoned, it was a dead end for the Caral civilization, but not for the people or for many of their traditions. And undoubtedly, some of the traditions continued to influence later people, carried down from generation to generation.
The city of Caral flourished for 1,000 years before suffocating in the desert sands. Its people forged the first civilization of the Americas. Most archaeologists once thought that all cultures followed a similar path. War was a driving force, and pottery a prerequisite for any new civilization. Caral rips up the rulebook.
This is totally unique in human history. What archaeologists found here is nothing like the other early civilizations. It demonstrates that there are different pathways to becoming civilized.
Caral's incredible story is forcing archaeologists to rethink the history of civilization. Evidence from this site proves that societies can emerge from peaceful beginnings, born from trade, not conquest. That a culture can be technologically advanced enough to build earthquake-resistant buildings without first inventing the simplest clay pots. Caral was a society that fought off some of nature's harshest challenges, but was eventually defeated. The first civilization in the Americas.
Naked History is brought to you by Element 18. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a comment below and subscribe to our channel for new videos every week.